Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We're so excited that you're here this morning in the rain. It's the perfect conversation to talk about water. So welcome. If you just a couple housekeeping before I hand it off to Skylar to get us going. Lunches, if you didn't grab one, are out in the hallway. There's also water, coffee, sodas if you need it. Bathrooms are out the door to your right in the atrium areas. If for any reason that we get a severe thunderstorm tornado alert, we will calmly exit and go to the rooms on this side that do not have windows. So they're to your left and then right by where you came in from the lobby. So otherwise, really looking forward to the conversation. I will hand it over to Skylar to get us started. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm Skylar Ellis. I'm an environmental planner here with GNRC, and I'm the one who's been emailing all of you and sending you all the materials. So welcome, and thank you all very much for being here today. We have a very good group here, so it should have some good discussions, and we have some good stuff to look forward to. So I'm just quickly going to walk us through our agenda and some minor introductions. Before I get into that, just for any newcomers, I wanted to do just a quick description of GNRC, what we do, and then sort of the origin of the roundtable. So GNRC, I'm not going to get into the details because it's confusing and I, quite frankly, don't understand it either, but we're a quasi-governmental organization that acts as the development district for the Middle Tennessee region. We cover like 13 to 14 counties, depending what the project is we're working on. Our main goal is just to pursue the long-term livability and improvement in the region, and we offer a variety of programs and services to meet that end. So we have aging and disability services, where we connect aging or disabled individuals to services they might need. We have economic and community development, which helps communities with sort of affordable housing, sewer and water projects, getting grant and loan applications and that planning process. We have transportation and infrastructure, who work on implementing transportation investments in the region. And then my team, last but not least, is the community regional planning team, which covers environmental planning, which can be we do air quality, solid waste, watersheds. There's on-call planning services, which sort of acts as, for smaller communities, you act sort of like a zoning board for that community. And then sort of special projects, which can be comprehensive plans, growth plans, things like that. And then we have sort of more internal teams, finance and data research, that help us. Data research does a lot, especially with us. They make all the maps, do all the GIS work. So with that whole description of GNRC, the roundtable was first convened in 2020 to help with an update to the Regional Transportation Plan, the RTP, which is, again, sort of our focus for this year. But outside of that, it's sort of morphed into this opportunity to just convene all of these people and act as a forum to share environmental projects, issues, just things going on in the region that we should all be worried about. So that, I'm going to go to our agenda for today. So first, we're going to, well, after the introduction period, we're going to have a peer exchange, which for future reference, that's a point where anybody can reach out to me if you have a project or something going on that you'd like to spend a little more time sharing with everyone and do a full presentation. Let me know about that, and we can get that set up for our next meetings. We'll have 2 more throughout this year. So today we have April Grippo, Director of TDEC Division of Water Resources, here with us. And April's role is statewide. She leads about 400 scientists and engineers with water, wastewater, natural resources, emergency management programs. And prior to joining TDEC, April was a project manager with a private consulting firm in Florida. And she spent time as a water planning engineer with the state of Virginia. And she has a master's degree in engineering from the University of Virginia. So very qualified, very knowledgeable. We're very happy to have her here. After that, we will have a little legislation overview, sort of hitting the main big ticket items from the most recent session. And covering that, we have, excuse me, we have Peter Westerholm, our Director of External Affairs, will be going over that. And then we will have our Regional Transportation Plan update. And I believe Matthew Cushing, our Transportation Planning Manager, will be going over that. After that, we will have our Around the Table time, which is if anyone has just anything they want to share that you've been working on, cool events coming up, just anything, go ahead and share it then. And then we will discuss a few of our upcoming activities we have going on, and then any other discussion, and we'll adjourn. So if there are no other questions, we will go to our official introduction time where we're going to do a little around the table introduction. I think we should have okay. So we're going to do your name and organization, and then what is your favorite spring flower, just as a fun little question. So I will start. Back there, we go around here. Okay, so we'll go around the room this way, and then we'll start with Emery and kind of snake through there. I'm Skylar Ellis. I'm with GNRC. And my favorite spring flower is a daffodil. Very classic, very simple.
Hi, everybody. Good to see a lot of you again. My name is Maddie Bowles. I'm also with GNRC as another environmental planner. And my favorite spring flower is going to be the dwarf bearded iris.
Good morning, everyone. Pete Westerholm, GNRC. I will say that my favorite spring flower is a big leaf magnolia tree's flower.
Hey, I'm Daniel McDonald, Director of Infrastructure or Transportation Infrastructure here at GNRC. I'm going to say right now at the moment, Widow's Cross Sedum. I have a bunch blooming right now. Top of mind.
I'm Matthew Cushing, Transportation Planning Manager here at GNRC. I am not super educated on spring flowers. I will say it's whatever my son likes on the back of the bike on the way in. He's pointing them out these days.
All right, I'm Connor Carroll. I'm an intern in the planning department here at GNRC. And my favorite spring flower is my mom's favorite spring flower, a tulip. Purple ones. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Biggs. I'm a staff attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center here in our Nashville office. And my favorite spring flower is a trillium.
Hi, everyone. Elise Karpinski. I'm with Harpeth Conservancy. I'm the new policy director over there. My favorite spring flower is a parrot tulip.
Hi, I'm Grace Fulmers. I'm a biologist with the Corps here for the Nashville District. I just started recently, so I'm excited to get to meet all you guys. And my favorite spring flower would have to be a Mexican cat, which is not native to Tennessee, but it is in Texas.
I'm Patrick Garner. I'm a biologist in the planning branch at the Nashville District Corps of Engineers, and I love a dogwood blossom.
My name is Bradley Klingsheim. I work for the Army Corps of Engineers as a planner in water supply. And my favorite flower right now for spring is daffodil because my 3-year-old daughter picked a lot of them and brought them to us for the table this year.
I'm Tara Pedraza. I'm the Director of Stakeholder Engagement for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And favorite spring flower, I was going to say trillium, but I'll go with Virginia bluebell.
Jack McFadden. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Nashville. And my favorite is the dwarf larkspur.
Hey everybody, I'm Nasir Bey with the Nature Conservancy in Tennessee. My favorite spring flower is Dutchman's Britches.
I'm Maria Maring with 10 Green Land Conservancy, and my favorite flower is also trillium, but specifically the grandifloran species with the pink variegation.
Chandira Edgecombe, MDOT. I'm also the TDM planner. I am new to spring in general, and I'm going to defer that.
My name is Megan Madsen. I'm also with NDOT. I oversee the RTDM program called the Nashville Connector. And my favorite spring flower are lilacs.
Reginald Archer. I'm associate professor at Tennessee State University in the Department of Environmental Sciences. My area is geographic information systems. So I do everything, mapping technology. And I'll say my favorite spring flower is anyone that doesn't activate allergy.
Jennifer Westerholm, Metro Nashville Department of General Services, Hyacinth. So
Great Perry, Cumberland River Compact. I'd say either Coreopsis or Bee Balm are probably two of my favorite ones to see right now.
Travis Groth with the Murray County Chamber and Economic Alliance. I'm rapidly trying to come up with a new spring flower because everybody's taking it. I'll just go, I like to see the flowers on any of the vegetables in the garden. That means that it's coming along.
I'm Cynthia Allen. I'm with MTSU, who do the stormwater program and outreach, and also Stones River Watershed Association. And I'm a diehard Peony fan. So.
I'm Liz Steinstraub, Green Infrastructure Manager for General Services Sustainability Division, and I would also pick a dogwood flower.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Guillen. I'm the Tennessee Valley Policy Manager for the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network, SSDN for short. Better to do the short version. I'm pretty new to the position, 2 months in, and I'd say my favorite spring flower is a peony as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Bonix. I am research faculty in Earth and Environmental Sciences at Vanderbilt University. I run the research office in the College of Education. My favorite flower is the bluebell. I gotta say it's
Good morning, everyone. I'm Clarissa Cahill. I am the Nashville Regional Director of Office for the Office of External Affairs with TDEC. And my favorite spring flower, white, pink, blue hydrangeas.
I'm April Graveau again with TDEC Water, and my daylilies are blooming. So I'm going to go with that.
Good morning. I'm Michael Skipper with the Greater Nashville Regional Council. I've got two tulip poplars in my front yard, and they're lovely this time of year.
Good morning, everybody. Almost afternoon. My name is Jessica Hill. I'm the Director of Community Regional Planning here at GNRC, and I love azaleas.
I'm Emery Hartz. I'm the Community Outreach Manager with GNRC, and I also have the parrot Phyllis.
Joanna McCall, I'm on the Research and Analytics team here at GNRC, and I like the cornflower bachelor's button.
Heidi McIntyre Wilkinson. I'm with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture's Land and Water Stewardship Group, and I moved here from Texas, so I'm going to go with bluebonnets.
Todd Schultz, Superintendent of Murray County Water System. And my favorite spring flower is the daffodil.
Mazo Carey, Harvard Conservancy, like the Japanese blossoms they have in Washington. I don't know what they call it, but I like it.
I'm Trey Bussey. I'm a staff attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. My favorite spring flower is whatever iris just bloomed in my front yard.
Hey, Will Rogers. I'm Safety Planning Coordinator with Daniel and Matthew over there, Texas. So I love the Texas bluebonnet.
Good morning. My name is Jacqueline Matupi. I am in transition right now. My favorite flower, I would say, is the wild lilacs.
Andrew Orr, City of Franklin, and I'm going to go with the black-eyed Sues.
Taylor Lee of GNRC. I'm the planner on the transportation infrastructure team. I'd say two, one being from Knoxville, so the orange American daisy. And next would be the Dutchman's Bridges.
Max Baker, lead the research team here at GNRC. I'll second the Tennessee orange flower, but also rhododendron.
Andrew McIntyre, a planner on the transportation infrastructure team, and I'll go hibiscus.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Napoli. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development here at GNRC. And my favorite flower in its springtime is the daffodil, because my family farm over in northern Benton County has a field that is 100% covered in them every spring.
Donna Anderson, I'm also a part of the Economic Community Development Team, and my favorite spring flower is Forsythia.
Filipina Mukherjee, I'm with GNRC. My favorite spring flower is baby spread.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Barber on the Economic and Community Development team here at GNRC. And I think my favorite spring flower, no, it's maybe not technically a flower, is a tulip poplar bloom.
Katie Thorne, Economic and Community Development Specialist at GNRC as well. Favorite spring flower / favorite fragrance is, I think it's osmanthus, but it's also known as like tea olive blossoms or sweet olive blossoms. They smell good.
head branding real estate researcher. I'm going to go with what somebody said earlier. I'm going to go with what my mama liked, which was the miracle.
Very nice. Some of them, I'm impressed by some of those. I had a week to think about it and I picked daffodils. All right. So moving on. Peer exchange, we're going to hand it over to April to begin her presentation, and Julie, the clicker.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. This is super fun for me because Michael Skipper and I grew up together and have known each other for more years than either of us care to admit. And I've been very inspired by the work that he and his entire team have done here. And it's just an honor to be able to speak about my professional life, which is water supply and water resources. And it's kind of neat how those have married together today. So there I am. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state role in water supply, specifically the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, our executive level organization, and what we do in water supply. We've been active in this space for many, many years, but it's taken on a new role and interest as so many of us are looking to balance our water resources. So we want to make sure that we're balancing protecting those and making sure that we have safe, reliable, and plentiful drinking water for all Tennesseans with all of the designated uses of our Tennessee streams. So I wanted to talk about those just a little bit today and let you know that while we're talking about water supply, and I think most of you in this room are very concerned with how we are going to be able to address water supply needs in the midst of the growth that we're experiencing, especially here in Middle Tennessee. TDEC has long been charged with protecting these 7 designated uses. So this is in state rule and state law, and they are fish and aquatic life and recreation. Sometimes you'll hear that referred to as all Tennessee streams should be fishable and swimmable. Irrigation and livestock watering for the ag interests in the room and in our state. Those are important designated uses. Drinking water supply and industrial water supply we'll talk about a lot today. And then also some streams in our state are designated for navigation. So every stream and river in Tennessee has some subset of these designated uses. And we're working very hard to protect those. And I think you'll find today that I'm very positive and confident that we can do this, that we can balance all of these needs in our state if we are very intentional about it and if we all work together. So here's why I'm so positive. I think that we're already doing this. We recently learned that Tennessee had been ranked #2 in drinking water quality. This is one of those, I have a child going to college, so this is fresh on my mind right now. You know those U.S. News and World Report rankings? This was one of those metrics for like overall livability, and I glommed on it really quick because this is my world, and I'm really proud of the fact that we have worked so hard in drinking water. Those of you like Todd in the room who work in drinking water, it's kind of one of those unseen things. You appreciate it maybe, but you really appreciate it when you don't have it. A lot of people will say when your cable goes out, you'll give it a little while. When your power goes out, you'll give it a little while. When your water goes out, you call the news in 5 minutes. So it's very, very important. And I'm really proud that Tennessee was ranked #2. Anybody want to guess what was #1? Not you, Stephanie Biggs, because I think you know. Anybody want to guess?
Florida.
Not Florida. No. How about if I tell you it's not even a continental U.S. state? Hawaii. I mean, yeah. How many water systems do they even have? We have like almost 700. So I'm feeling like we should be #1. But anyway, I think we're doing it. I think we're well on our way to being able to balance all of those different needs. TDEC gets involved in water supply planning in a lot of different ways. We have 4 different programs that intersect in water supply programs. But I want to tell you about this one because people that are maybe looking to use water supply as a surrogate for growth planning may not know about this particular rule. State law and state rule drives water systems to develop alternate plans to expand their water systems anytime they hit 80% of their design capacity. And this is not just for water systems that have an intake in a river. This is also for purchase only or distribution only systems. When they hit 80% of their capacity, the state law says you've got to start planning on how you're going to get more water. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. I think it's a really important thing to know. So we hit water systems there. We hit them in our, so that's from the Safe Drinking Water Act. In our engineering systems programs, we require certain plans and specs, and we review all water line, water treatment plants, all of the engineering that goes with that. In our loan and grant programs, State Revolving Loan Fund, our most recent American Rescue Plan money, anytime we use state or federal money to go to water systems, they have to demonstrate that they're working towards adequate capacity to plan for growth. And then our ARAP permitting program that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, it kind of takes a different avenue of making sure that when we withdraw the water that we're able to balance out against those designated uses. So 4 different key programs where TDEC touches water system planning. This is the one that we're talking about the most right now, and this is water withdrawal permitting. So our state law calls for kind of a special type of permit, an aquatic resources alteration permit, or we call that ARAP for short. And this is for any activity, not just water withdrawal, but maybe a bridge or diverting a stream, filling in a wetland, any activity that would result in the alteration of our state waters. And then that includes water withdrawal. So we're talking about that right now because water systems that withdraw from Tennessee rivers and streams will need to work with TDEC to get this permit. This permit, our ARAP, it also serves as our federal 401 water quality certification, and that's an important component for federal permitting. Typically, a water system works with TDEC first. So we're sort of out front and we have to make some real big decisions, and then the entities will take those decisions to the federal government for their permitting, either the TVA or the Corps. And then I want to just tell you a little bit about this. This is a relatively new rule. This law went into effect in 2000. And at the time that it went into effect, there was this idea that if you already had a water intake in the state of Tennessee, it probably wasn't doing any damage. So they kind of like grandfathered those in. So a water system was grandfathered in for, but prior to if they existed prior to the year 2000, for the amount of water that they were withdrawing at that time. I say that because hardly any water, I don't know of a single water system in Middle Tennessee that isn't pulling out more than they were in the year 2000. So moving forward, we're going to require that everyone has permits. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Duck River, just kind of as a test case for this work that TDEC is doing to balance the needs and protecting the designated uses of these waters. Because the Duck River is very complicated. We have a lot of challenges. I'm going to see them as opportunities, being an optimist and a positive thinker today. But a number of challenges and opportunities in the Duck River watershed just south of us. And one of those is that we have a high number of public water system withdrawals in the river. As we stand today, we have 7 different intakes and 3 more that are proposed, plus Centerville, which is just a little bit off of the river on its south. So we have a lot. That's for being a fairly low flow stream and kind of a smaller watershed. That's a lot of water users. We estimate that between 250,000 and 300,000 will be using drinking Duck River water in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's really, really significant. And then maybe best of all, there's a significant amount of public interest in protecting the river. It's widely known as the most biologically diverse river in North America. I'm sure you've heard this if you've watched the news in the past few years or maybe read National Geographic magazine. We host over 50 species of freshwater mussels in the Duck River, 151 species of fish, and many threatened and endangered species, including some freshwater mussel species that are globally significant populations and occur only in the Duck River. They're not found anywhere else in the world. With all the conservationists in this room, y'all know a lot more about this than I do, but I'm very impressed. I've been in meetings with TWRA and Fish and Wildlife representatives and others, and they tell me that they have tried to propagate and send these mussels to other areas in South Carolina and Alabama, and for reasons we don't completely understand, they just don't take. So the Duck River is extremely special habitat to those species. I've been to some talks with professors that have hypotheses that it is about the mineral content. The Duck River has a strong groundwater connection. It's about the guaranteed flow that we receive from the TVA. This is a managed river with environmental flows. We're still learning a little bit about these mussels, but we're really proud to host them, and we want to be sure that TDEC completes its role in protecting those. We designate the Duck River our highest level of state protection. There's a national level we're not going to talk about today, but our highest level of state protection, and that is an exceptional Tennessee water. And so that's very significant that we're going to do everything that we can to protect the Duck River, especially when we're considering our water withdrawal permits. There's also an existing regional planning organization, which made it a nice place to start in the Duck River because we already had that framework. This is a group that has been around for over 50 years. It was established by state law. Our forefathers here in Tennessee and our lawmakers anticipated that there would come a time when this little stream would need to serve between 250,000 and 300,000 Tennesseans, and we're here. And so this cooperative framework already exists. They have regular meetings, they have goals, they have money, and so they've been a really good partner in our effort here in the Duck River watershed. And then, not unique to the duck, but the duck is extremely susceptible to drought. And so that's a big concern that we want to make sure that we maintain certain flows in that we're able to address drought concerns in that watershed. I'll point out, this is a picture of me in the watershed. Maybe a couple of years ago, I went on a float with a couple of professors from Tennessee Tech. And at the end of this day, I could identify 10 different species of mussels. And then about a week later, it fell out of my head. As an engineer, that's kind of a crowning moment for me. So no doubt, I just sort of told you all the things that are special about the Duck River. No doubt that there is a significant need for comprehensive regional planning in this watershed. We discovered that a little over 5 years ago in the course of a single year, we met with 8 different water systems about new or expanded intake. So they were looking at how were they going to be able to balance the needs of growing populations, some industrial growth, mostly residential growth in the area, and all but one. So we only had Columbia Power and Water had an ARAP water withdrawal permit already for an expansion that they had some years earlier, but most of these water systems did not have ARAP permits. They wanted to be able to accommodate growth. We are working with them to accommodate short-term needs. So our ARAP permits are only for 5 years. And I say that because you hear a lot about water allocation in the West. We do not have that here in Tennessee, which is, I appreciate that lawmakers had the forethought to not require that, because that's one way that I'm able to stay so positive about all the water supply demands that we have in our area. If we find that someone has a capacity that is greater than needed, we could always dial back on the amount of permitted intake that they have on a 5-year basis. That's really powerful when you consider some of the news that we see in the West, where people have, it's like a pie and they've got their piece of the pie and they're going to keep it. They're kind of, bartering and concerned over agricultural needs versus industrial needs. And so we don't have that here in Tennessee. So I think that's really special. So we know that we can accommodate the short-term needs. We're working on, the 5-year needs, and that round of permitting is going on right now. What we're working on is what are we going to be able to do beyond that? That's going to require some further data analysis, cooperation with hundreds of stakeholders in the area to make sure that what we are doing here in the Duck River watershed is fair and equitable and sustainable. Again, I can't say it enough, although we talk about water supply a lot, our goal here is to accommodate all 7 of those designated uses that we talked about earlier. And we've done this in a very transparent forum. We've had over 9 stakeholder meetings since June 2020, when we kind of came to everybody and said, hey guys, we've had 8 different people coming to us wanting more water. We just want to, really step out in the public and just shine a light on what's going on here and come up with a plan. We had an emergency drought meeting in September of 2024. We had an unusual drought in the Duck River last fall in the river part of, we've got a drought planned for the lake, for the Normandy Reservoir, which feeds the Duck River, but not for the river. And so that was kind of a wake-up call. And I believe that in part led to Governor Lee, who wants to be known as the conservation governor, making a significant announcement in November 2024. And that was a real cool career highlight for me to have a meeting with these people that I'd been working with for 5 years to share this news about this executive order. So just kind of a glance at the Duck River watershed. This is kind of divided into 2. We have the upper watershed and the lower watershed. The upper would be in the kind of right-hand side on the west side with Normandy Reservoir, the Duck River Utility Commission, which serves Manchester and Tullahoma, and then down to Shelbyville, Bedford County, Lewisburg. And then you'll start to see some of the dots kind of look like half of a pizza. Those are the 3 proposed intakes. So Marshall County is working on a new intake. We have an intake for the Spring Hill Water System, Columbia Power and Water, their existing intake. We've discussed with Murray County a new intake in the Columbia area. And then there is a new proposed Columbia intake much, much further downstream where the flows get higher. We see a lot of return flows there. And then I mentioned just on this far left or west corner of Centerville, they have an intake in the Duck River. It's just off of the Duck River on Little Swan Creek. And we're having conversations with them about possibly in the future future, moving their intake into the main stem. So TDEC had already adopted this holistic approach to water withdrawal permitting with permitting for the next 5 years, the baseline, plus a little bit for systems to grow and increase capacity, and then consider new intakes on a 5-year basis, regional growth planning, looking at interconnection. Interconnection is more important to me than ever after I flew out multiple times to East Tennessee in late September and early October to see the devastation from Hurricane Helene. We had 190,000 people without water for days to weeks. And while I work in this business and I talk a lot about interconnection, it just means something different when you've seen people without water and you see what that means. And we had a dashboard and we were counting the days and hours. As a water system came on board, we would kind of do a cheer in the office. So I say that because regional interconnection, I'm going to push even harder for it now more than ever. We will continue to analyze for endangered species and mitigating for any changes to those. We want to better understand the designated uses so that we can balance recreation and agriculture. That's an important one because in Tennessee, we don't regulate agriculture water withdrawals. So while it's good that most of the agriculture in the Duck River watershed uses treated water, the poultry houses in Bedford County prefer the quality of our treated water. I mean, it's the second best in the nation. Who would? So that's important, but if we were ever in a drought situation, ag could move over to the main stem of the duck and pull out what they need for irrigation or livestock watering, poultry needs, that type of thing. So we want to keep a close eye and open communication about that as well. And then we're very interested about how to continue to leverage some of the funding that we have available, especially the federal money that we're bringing into our state from the American Rescue Plan, bipartisan infrastructure law, state funds to continue to develop and implement collaborative plans. And so we will just rinse and repeat. Every 5 years, we will go through this cycle again. So that brings me to that executive order 108 that I mentioned that the governor released in November. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is specific to that Duck River test case, but we're going to be expanding this to the whole state. So we start with 3 major elements in the executive order. Governor Lee established a new Duck River Planning Partnership. That's a 19-member organization that represents just about every state, federal, or conservation group in Tennessee you can imagine, and provides very specific directives. This is for the remainder of his gubernatorial term. So it's a very short blast of work that we're already doing. His executive order established a laundry list of things for me and my colleagues to accomplish at TDEC, along with other agencies and partners. And then perhaps my favorite part is that it gives us a directive to take this recipe and apply it throughout the state with a priority on regionalization, which, as I said, means more than ever. This group has met, this 19-member partnership has already met a couple of times as a whole. This was at the first meeting over at the Capitol where Governor Lee delivered a charge to us. And then we have 3 different work groups that are meeting regularly as well. That second part of the executive order challenges TDEC with just this laundry list of things to do, tasks us with addressing water loss, setting a goal of no more than 20% water loss. This is often through leaky pipes or water line breaks. I don't know if any of y'all saw the news, but we just endured a rough weekend over at Fall Creek Falls with a lot of water shortages there as a result of broken lines. In the state, we see some water loss in some water systems, especially if they're in a rocky area and they've got to put a lot of pressure behind their water to get it, elevation change. Fayetteville, for example, up on the plateau, we see some water loss in the 50%. Duck River is doing great. So I don't think it'll be a problem to meet this 20%, but that's a lofty goal by the governor, and we're going to work to achieve that. Regionalization, we're working on habitat conservation for sensitive, threatened, and endangered species, working, as I said, with existing partners. And then a key component of the governor's work is that he would like to see more education, so more people aware of what we need to do in this watershed and also beyond. Expanding recreational use. Can we understand more about why it's so special? Do we need more boat ramps? We're working with TWRA to identify some of those. Drought planning is a very important component. The Duck River Agency has long been active in this space, but that drought that we had just this fall, I think, was really a wake-up call that we cannot stop, and we just really need to keep working on drought planning. Also working with TVA and TWRA and other stakeholders to consider the Normandy Reservoir. What do releases look like from that reservoir moving forward? We've made some great strides just this year in that work. And then my favorite part, large-scale engineering projects, we're looking at solutions to not only drought mitigation, but also the sustainability of the duck. These are going to be very, very expensive projects, maybe up to $1 billion. But we think that if we can do this in the Duck River, we will be able to take this model and do it anywhere. So that's very important, those large-scale engineering projects. Those could be anything from offline water harvesting in reservoirs that are not connected to the duck, interbasin transfer of bringing in water from other watersheds, reuse. We're seeing a lot of interest in water reuse. So that's a very exciting topic. But we're going to need a lot of money to make those projects happen. And so one of the other cool things that's been going on this year is the governor gave us $100 million in his budget for TDEC to use towards realizing regional water supply strategies. That was mostly for those large-scale engineering projects. Unfortunately, our state legislators came and took $35 million of that and gave it to other projects. But I'm still saying $65 million feels like a win to me, going in when we had zero allocated towards a large-scale engineering project at the state level before this legislative year. Governor Lee also asked for $24.5 million for planning in the watershed, and they did keep that intact. So we're really excited about being able to use that money for some good projects. Some of the solutions that I mentioned earlier have to do with interbasin transfer. This is our term for bringing in water from outside of the basin. So here's one example. We are talking about we're talking about 4 different options for pipelines, bringing in water from either the Cumberlands, the Tennessee, another location in the Cumberland, or even the Elk River on a smaller scale. This one was just shown to legislators as an example of what we might do with that $65 million project. This would be incentive money for the water systems to work together on a single solution interbasin transfer. And the ones noted here would just be transferring water from the Cumberland down to the Duck. And this would be treated water. We're looking not only to use those monies, but also to leverage some of the other funding opportunities that we have available through TDEC. TDEC Water runs our state revolving loan fund, which water systems in the room will be very familiar with, as well as our state water infrastructure grants program. And we do have reuse and regionalization grants that are available through that program. We also, to kind of convince the legislature that this was a needed project and that we would be able to use this throughout the other states, throughout the state and other areas, we also have a pretty lengthy list of ideas where we might go into regionalization, but I'm going to say maybe these are our top 5. So these are the areas that we plan to move into after the Duck River, but always open to new opportunities and ideas for communities that will regionalize. I really think that that's the way that we're going to be able to sustain our precious water resources moving forward, is to work together on some of those regional solutions. Use is a very cool and timely topic in the Duck River and beyond. But right now we have 3 big water reuse projects that we're working on in the state of Tennessee. This one is from Spring Hill. TDEC has funded 2 reuse projects in Middle Tennessee, in Spring Hill and Franklin. Spring Hill is currently working on a pilot project to highly purify treated wastewater from their existing publicly owned wastewater treatment plant. And then they will take that treated wastewater, that effluent, and put it in an offline reservoir. So this is just, they're going to dig this. This will have no connection to an existing Tennessee River or stream. They will blend that with water from the Duck River that they will harvest during high flow times when water's plentiful, maybe like a day like today. And then they will use that reservoir now as their water supply. That will be their water source moving forward. So right now they are initiating a project where they're testing, they're on like kind of a bench scale. They're testing how well they can treat the wastewater, can they get it to drinking water quality? So we're watching that very closely. The city of Franklin recently concluded a similar pilot project. So we're analyzing just tons and tons of data from that project. And then we also have another, I'm going to say it's cool, but just hear me out, guys. Okay, so y'all have heard of that XAI data center facility that's locating in Memphis. It may have a negative connotation on the air side and for environmental justice and for some other, but I'm just going to talk about water, because on the water side, it's a really cool project. So rather than use 1 to 2 million gallons a day to cool, data centers have a huge water need. They send water through their cooling coils. So rather than use that to cool their supercomputer, supercomputers and take that water from the precious Memphis aquifer. They are working with Memphis Wastewater Treatment Plant, and TDEC is supporting this effort to use treated wastewater. They're going to take some salts out and do a couple other things, but then they're going to run it through their coil. So we're going to get another use out of that water before it goes into the Mississippi. And so we're really excited about those three big projects. And I say big, we're going to be speaking about those on the national circuit for some years to come. So we're really lucky to have Middle Tennessee as kind of a microcosm for this type of research and development. And then probably my favorite part of that Duck River order, that executive order calls for how we are going to apply this recipe to the rest of the state. And regionalization is an important component of that. State water supply planning, riparian restoration, even incorporating stormwater. So some smaller programs, but bringing them all together under this umbrella is going to be an important initiative of TDEC's for many years to come. So thinking beyond some of the things that we've talked about today, there's a myriad of ways that TDEC can help. So if you are part of a water system or a community that's struggling to get answers for water supply, I would encourage you to come in and meet with us, either at the executive level or with our engineers, with our funding, the people that work in our state revolving loan program, and just help us kind of understand the challenges that you're facing. We are excited about the recommendations that will come out of that 19-member partnership. Some of the conversations that I've been part of are really exciting and progressive, considering water supply in the state of Tennessee. So we're looking at things like growth planning. I was saying I get a little sensitive when our permits are used as a surrogate for good growth planning. That's the state level is not where that happens. At TDEC, we're going to work to ensure safe, reliable, and plentiful drinking water for all Tennesseans with our permits. We're not going to use those as a surrogate for growth planning. We will support growth planning at the local level in any way that we can. And so if that means we're going to put a stop to green lawns or communities that require certain irrigation structures, so at the same time that they're asking for more water, we'll do that there. But we're not going to necessarily put a cap on the available amount of water and use that as a surrogate for good growth planning that many of you in this room are already doing. We'll continue to work on regionalization, and that includes the planning of subsequent water systems. A lot of the purchase-only systems sometimes feel hostage by the parent system that has the intake. And so we're working on some strategies for those systems. A lot of that will start with our incentive funding that we have available for that type of regionalization and those type of partnerships. We can help water systems to do analysis of water needs and to identify good areas for emergency connections, and then we'll bring some money to the table wherever we can. We are working on new strategies and communications of water demand projections. This is something that is evolving, especially as we look at water restrictions that are necessary in some of these areas to respond to drought. As we consider what type of industry we may be attracting to our area. Is it industry that needs a certain amount of water? Is that consumptive? All of those things will go into the equations that we're looking at. Updating state regulations that have to do with reuse, as I mentioned. We currently have a task force that we started in August that is working on water reuse regulations that will allow those three big projects to come to fruition. Water loss and conservation, and then last but not least, working on public education. And I included this photo in the bottom right corner there. That is me and our current mayor in Columbia at the elementary school that Michael and I attended many, many, many years ago. So just, getting kids started early in education is something I don't get to do very often, but maybe one of the more fun parts of my job. So with that, I don't know if I left any time for questions. I have a couple. Okay. Any questions about the work that TDEC's doing and how it might intersect with the work that you're conducting?
You said you held 9 stakeholder meetings. Were those all focused around the Duck River watershed, or was that a statewide?
Yes, those were all focused on the Duck River, kind of using it as kind of a pilot project. Yeah, and well represented by the Corps.
I thought you had the state map. I'm in Middle Tennessee, the lower part of Middle Tennessee. Do you know if there's any communications currently going on there? Or specifically like around Middle Tennessee?
Communications on
your task force that you had. I was just curious if you had any specific meetings.
Sure. We've most of our meetings have been virtual, and I can get TINSA or any of the organizations that you represent that contact information. The governor's partnership is specific to the Duck River. And so I think that all the representatives are either, if they represent state agencies or federal agencies, they might live somewhere else. But all of the other representatives are, we have a couple of local mayors, our elected officials are from the Duck River watershed. So, yeah.
On the interbasin transfer, the slide label showing the transfer between Nashville and Duck River, it says it's potential raw water. You described it as treated water. Is it treated or raw?
So we're considering like four different options. The Cumberland one was just sort of an easy option to kind of explain. The Cumberland option currently that we're exploring would be treated water from Harpeth Valley Utility District has an intake over on I guess that's on the west side of the river. That would be treated. If we go over to the Tennessee, over on the west side, that would be untreated water. So we would bring untreated water, raw water, I should say. We would bring raw water over to maybe the Murray County area and treat it there and distribute it throughout the watershed. The other area of the Cumberland up on the east side, that would likely be a new intake, and that would be raw water. And then if we go to the Elk, which I don't think is terribly likely, but it's an alternative we're considering, that would be raw water as well.
So I'm currently working on a regionalization project, and I'm curious, is TDEC planning on offering funding for that beyond ARPA's exploration?
Yes, we are. I was telling Todd Schultz and I were talking about this at the beginning. We have a new regionalization grant that uses state money. And so we've asked for $10 million recurring. We got it the past 2 years in the governor's budget and through the legislature. So I'm hoping that we see that moving forward. Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards about what that might. We're kind of figuring out what that might look like, but we're really interested in kind of multiple projects that we can get on the ground so we can learn, in parallel.
Thank you.
In your map of the 5 regionals, you've got the Sequatchie Valley, but it doesn't go down to Chattanooga. Given the ongoing dispute between Atlanta and Chattanooga and who has the water and all that, I don't know how much of a thing that still is, but is that a factor in your planning? And are you going to put Chattanooga in some sort of regional alliance or maybe one of its own to address their unique issues?
Sure. Now that's not really on I would say our long list of kind of where our regional priorities are. I would certainly be open to any conversations. And we talked to Chattanooga a lot about their water, well, really on wastewater. We talked to them a lot on some of their wastewater needs. But really in that area of the map that you were seeing, it's really that kind of like Sequatchie, Dayton area. It is very drought sensitive. I haven't looked at a drought map in a couple of weeks. In April, we were still in a drought in the Sequatchie Valley, and we do see some shortages in that area. So that's one reason why that's on our top 5 things.
So the Atlanta-Chattanooga thing is really more Atlanta grousing than it is a Chattanooga thing.
Yes. That kind of bubbles to the surface every couple of years. I haven't heard a lot about that recently, but yes, they definitely want our water.
Especially around Atlanta.
I've heard talks about moving the border, Anyone else?
April, I love your perspective that permitting is not a surrogate for good planning. As you know, we're doing working with local communities on updating comprehensive plans across Middle Tennessee, but we also have a regional land use forecast model that predicts future population and jobs at a parcel level out to the year 2050. And we could do scenarios as well. So what does that look like on your end if we were to come to you and say, we need help doing a water needs assessment for this future that we're projecting?
Sure. I think one of the things that we're finding is that across Tennessee and even across Middle Tennessee, utilities do their growth projections and their water needs analysis in all kinds of different ways. I would love to see that streamlined and maybe have a consistent way of approaching that. Even if we could just start in the Duck River, that would be a huge win for us, because when TDEC goes to analyze the ask, like, hey, we think we need 5 million gallons, we have to say, well, why? Can you demonstrate that to us? And when there's 12 different recipes for how to do that, and we're not economists or land use planners ourselves, it creates a challenge. So that would be really great for us if we could come up with, in the industry, there's some multipliers and some kind of fairly agreed on things, but not everybody applies them in the same way. So I think if we could get there, I think that may be a recommendation that we see in the partnership based on some of the early conversations I'm hearing. We do have Chris White, land use planner for I think it's Bedford County, and he's been very vocal in that space. Probably the only planner we've got on that team. So we'd be really excited about that. We're also going to be using that $24.5 million to put together an integrated water resources database. And so if we could maybe marry the information that we have, which will be public domain, and give that to y'all so that y'all could use that in your planning, that would be great too.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, so next coming up, we have our legislation overview. So I'm going to hand it over to Peter.
Slides. All right. So following April, this will be a little bit goodness. I'm going to try to go quickly because we have a lot of things on our agenda we're trying to get to. The first of those was the EO that she described on the Duck River protection. I'm just going to omit that because she did a great job, I think, of providing an overview on that. But what we want to do before I go through the rest of them is just give you an overview of what we've been tracking, both as staff and through our team that we worked with on legislative affairs, what things caught our eye, and just to make sure they're on your radar. We also want to make sure that we have a brief opportunity to find out if there are any questions or concerns or any positive benefits from the legislation that we'll be describing. So we do want to get a little bit of your feedback as we go through this, then identify any additional items that you want to be included or any other things that you're aware of you want to bring to our attention or to the attention to this roundtable. So with that, we're going to move on to the second item, which is the Farmland Preservation Act. This did get signed into law this recently as Public Chapter 470. This created a fund to establish a conservation easement grant program, essentially looking at how to make farmland preservation financially feasible for a lot of family farms that we see throughout the Tennessee area. There's an initial $25 million in funding to provide these grants to property owners, and we will be eager to see how these are utilized. But we expect that with this additional incentive to the property owners, there will be more land moving into a protected status. Yeah, question on that, or comment.
And what was signed, what was the term that the landowners had to agree to? Was it 15?
That one, let's see if it's my notes. Do I have top of your head?
They're perpetual. They're perpetual easements. Is that your question?
Yes.
Last year, this bill was also being discussed, and it had been diluted to 15 or 10-year term easements, but this time the bill passed as perpetual easements.
Does that make them eligible for the federal conservation easement, like tax abatement funding?
I would assume, yes. I mean, all conservation easements, depending on the landowner's personal financial situation, are eligible for a federal income tax deduction, and that's part of the Internal Revenue Code.
Inside. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, moving on to the next one. This is the Wetlands Act that's been around for a couple of years. When it did get signed into law as Public Chapter 437. More recently, this legislation was to ease the development restrictions on wetlands, especially those termed isolated wetlands. It created 4 different categories of isolated wetlands based on factors including their acreage and size and the quality that they're identified with. This also prohibited some of the consideration of these isolated wetlands when determining the impact of a project for permitting purposes. There's an estimate that 80% of isolated Tennessee wetlands may be vulnerable to development without the state oversight, according to one estimate. But it is still unclear exactly what we may see from this, but we expect a lot of the impact could be felt in West Tennessee area. I know that a number of groups in this table were involved in some of those conversations. Is any additional comments or feedback that anyone wants to share on this one?
I know it's already passed, but was there any thought in going forward in how wetlands will differ in the different regions? And our big question had been for Middle Tennessee is the karst impacts and the direct connections to our underground water and surface water connections and how that's going to help recharge. I didn't see a lot of that discussion, so I was just wondering if that had been in some of the communications.
I didn't see a lot of that this time, but I may have missed anything. Stephanie, do you remember anything about that?
I mean, I can say that SCLC and Harpeth Conservancy and several other groups testified several times before House and Senate committee talking about the benefits of wetlands and the importance of looking at things like groundwater recharge and stream recharge. I mean, to April's point about Duck River water supply being such a hot topic, the majority of isolated wetlands in Middle Tennessee are at the headwaters of the Duck, so are incredibly important for making sure that river has enough water to support all of its uses. But the concern is that several of those isolated wetlands will now be subject to fill without any mitigation requirements or anything like that. So it was raised and was not an effective argument to prevent it from being passed.
Or the different like geology and how the geology and soils will impact. That was another thing. I didn't see a lot of that communication, but I didn't know if I'd missed something.
And I think what's unique about Tennessee is that, you know, Eastern Tennessee is different than Middle Tennessee is different than Western Tennessee in terms of geography and environment and how our water resources, you know, work in our state. And so I do think that is a real concern in that the way that artificially isolated wetlands is currently defined by this new law, those wetlands could be recharging groundwater that then quickly enters into a river or stream. And so there is a real subsurface connection there. But that is not recognized under this current law as being, you know, depending on the size, it may be exempt from mitigation requirements.
That's kind of what we were wondering. So my question was, is there a way to kind of watch? Because I know that's a big concern for us, especially even on a campus site, and how we can like look at pilot studies on how that may affect and potentially cause amendments because of data we might see.
One of the things when this legislation first came about a couple of years ago, we didn't have a lot of clear data. Isolated wetlands are not really a thing. That's just something that's happened since the Sackett Supreme Court decision. And so TDEC developed really quickly. We have a really cool model. We're getting an award this summer out in California at the ESRI conference for the model that we've done. So we do have a predictive model for developers to see what wetlands might be on their property. It might affect their developability or whether or not they want to put it into preservation or maybe sell it off as mitigation credits, that type of thing. But the good news is that by developing that model, we'll be able to track. It'll be on an annual basis. We've already hired a contractor that's going to help us track those land use changes. And so we'll at least have data if the will of the legislature changes in future years and they're interested in that, we will have that available to talk about the impacts from those changes from wetland fill without mitigation.
Well, that'll help us even with our disaster mitigation and flood that is foreseeing challenges potentially.
Yeah. FEMA testified this year. They testified last year about concerns with flooding.
That was one thing. I'm in graduate school right now. I was trying to find some of the sites and the addresses for disaster mitigation. And I thought with that new tool, is there a way to link that with, because water is our #1 disaster problem. So is there a way to connect that potentially and looking at how that's even going to impact disaster?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That model is available publicly right now. If you just go and Google, I think it's like Tennessee TDEC wetland planning model or something like that. You'll have it's available. Yeah.
Any additional questions, comment, other feedback on this one? All right, moving on to number 4 on our list. This is the Greenbelt Act Amendment. This is an amendment to the Open Space Land Act of 1976 that increases the number of eligible acres per landowner from 1,500 to 3,000 acres in any one jurisdiction of taxation. This was designed to incentivize the preservation of more agricultural or forested or open space land by increasing the amount eligible under the Greenbelt Act. So when they're dealing with their tax assessments, this helps them have a favorable consideration if they go before the State Board of Equalization. There's potential impacts of this one on the property tax obligations of those individual owners, as well as potentials for the local municipalities to realize local property tax revenues, depending on what those could have otherwise been assessed at. So that's some brief bit on the Greenbelt Act. Any questions, comments? Otherwise, feedback? All right, and the final bill we wanted to point out to you was the pesticide liability bill. This one did not go through the House, was deferred to the second calendar of 2026, but essentially this was a bill that looks to remove the liability from pesticide manufacturers from a failure to warn product label lawsuit. So their argument was that as long as the labels on the pesticides were registered under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act and bore that same approval label at the time of sale, they wouldn't have any extra exposure from lawsuits. So this one, some of you may be more familiar with its path this past year, but it did get through the Senate, did not get through the House. So this one, there's a chance it could come back. So this will be something else that I want to keep an eye on to see what potential impacts and conversations may be coming around this. But I'll pause there to see if anyone wants to offer any comments, questions on this particular bill. All right, seeing none, I'll just pause for a moment to see if there's any other pieces of legislation or initiatives from the state General Assembly or other leadership that you wanted to point out or bring to the attention of the roundtable. All right, seeing none, sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question. I know PFAS has been an issue in our area too, and that legislation, do you have any updates on anything that's happening there? PFAS specifically?
We haven't looked into it. I know we were at the Tennessee Environmental Network Show of the South this past week, and I sat in on a couple of sessions on PFAS, and I know that they mentioned while we were there that EPA had continued keeping regulations in place for PFAS, but as far as what those look like, I don't know, but I can do some digging.
I'm concerned too, especially with the biosolids and how we're doing our land application and how that's tied to our wastewater treatment and just, that those overlaps and how that will emerge.
Well, it's a biosolids bill this year. I think they put it on next year's first calendar. TDEX, where we've got some permitting changes that we asked to get a chance to get in before moving to that. So there was some interest in PFAS was one of the reasons for that biosolids bill, but it did go through.
All right, seeing no other comments, I'll pass things back over to Skylar.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to everyone else who gave some input on those. That was very helpful. So moving on, we are now going to be going to Matthew for the RTP update. Oh, okay. Michael will get us going.
Thank you, Skylar. I'll go ahead and get us started here. So I'm going to kick us off. This is an update to you all as it relates to where we are with updating our regional transportation plan. At your last meeting, we did a deep dive on the background as to why we do a regional transportation plan, what the requirements are that we're trying to meet, and the overall objectives. Just a reminder, the current plan was adopted back in 2021 and has a horizon out to the year 2045. It's required by federal law to account for all the anticipated federal spending on transportation projects within our region. Over that time frame, the plan accounts for about $10.5 billion worth of federal funds, as well as the state and local matching funds to those dollars, and then itemizes that money onto individual projects that are planned for investment across our 7-county metropolitan planning area over the next 25 years. We're updating it now to extend the horizon out to 2050. So we've got those models ready to do water analysis on as well. And we build those models to predict future population and growth across our region. And we translate that growth into our traffic models to predict where traffic volumes traffic congestion will likely occur across the region so that we can identify the needs in front of us and then ideate projects to address those needs. So this is all background. The first two slides in your handout are background information, but I wanted to provide them to you in terms for context. This next slide is a look at where we are in the overarching timeline towards March 2026 is when we're scheduled for adoption. You can see in May here, we are discussing with our NPO members the policy framework, which I'll share with you this afternoon, financial assumptions, which I'll have for you next time. And then in June and July, we get into the weeds with our members about the needs assessment and then begin looking at the initial project evaluation. So for today's update, we're going to focus on, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew for a review of what we've been doing with our local jurisdictions across the region. One of the products of our collaboration with them has been a candidate project list. These are the projects that people would like to pursue over the next couple of decades. And then he'll turn it back over to me and I'll give you a preview of the policy framework that is about to go to the Transportation Policy Board tomorrow. Matthew.
Yeah. So thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for your time today. So as mentioned, I'll talk through kind of how we're actually getting to our RTP, our Regional Transportation Plan candidate list. So the big push we've been making recently in May was our county level workshops, as Michael mentioned, for our 7-county metropolitan planning organization area. So there's going to be 3 rounds to these county level workshops. The one that just concluded, in April, and then 2 upcoming in July and August. Broadly, what we do in the first round of meetings is just make sure we understand all of the projects in those counties in our MPO area. So that includes the scope of the project, the cost, but very importantly, also where the project is. For the next phase, we really need the geospatial, the location-based information of these transportation projects that are coming down the pipeline. So we did individual county meetings in each of those 7 counties with cities in that area, the counties in that area, the transit agencies in that area, to make sure that we understood all the projects and that if we knew of any that may be missing, we would bring them up. Moving forward, the next 2 rounds start to get into our evaluation process. So the RTP is a fiscally constrained plan. There's what sounds like a lot of money, but there's more need than money in pretty much every long range plan for this type of thing. So we move into an evaluation process. We'll talk about the policy framework in a moment for how we do that. But we move into an evaluation process where staff will be doing internal evaluations of the projects. At the July meetings, we'll be showing the preliminary outcomes of that evaluation with sponsor communities. That's a chance to again, make sure we fully understood the project. If we report something we evaluated and we didn't understand the scope, we'll talk about that with the communities. Also, if there was an obvious, like we flagged something that is important to our evaluation, to our scoring process, but it wasn't included in the project, we may bring this up to the applicant community at that time. And then moving into July, we're really kind of trying to wrap that all up based on that feedback. And we'll also be updating our cost estimates, scheduling scope to get all those projects really nailed down in a good way. I will comment, there's a lot of evaluation criteria that come into this, but part of those do have environmental considerations, environmental conflicts, and environmental challenges that we will be considering. That said, at the moment, we have just under 400 candidates projects in our candidate list. We've provided some summary level information of what that looks like for you here. I'll be transparent, it's a large list and there's a lot of projects, so it's hard to get all of the detail on one slide. You'll notice in the applications by type that the biggest category is on-road improvements. That is a big bucket of projects, so that really just means any existing roadway that is being improved. And those improvements can range from widening the roadway to adding a sidewalk on the side. It's a pretty broad category there. But you will also see public transit and greenway categories here as well. The other category usually is going to be like programming or project groupings for something that isn't kind of a big enough project to stand out on its own. But there's a category of projects that a municipality may be undertaking, like resurfacings or something along those lines. That's all for me. I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to Michael.
Thank you. Before we leave the project list, we didn't print that list up for you today, given this is the environmental roundtable, but it is available to you all online right now. It's a static PDF, and we'll keep that updated. We're probably 3 to 4 weeks out from converting that static list to an interactive database that you could search for projects in your area. I think we'll probably, for this group, build an opportunity for them to go in and annotate projects with any concerns that they may have, even if it's not specifically a request that we have of you. I think many of you in this room would be interested in noting specific environmental concerns with some of the projects that have been proposed. So just that link is in your pack there. I think what I'd like to do before we wrap up with the transportation update is give you a preview of what is going for the Transportation Policy Board tomorrow. The policy board is made up of the city and county mayors across 7 counties within the GNRC footprint. That's largely Davidson County, and then the surrounding counties immediately surrounding Davidson plus Murray counties included in our NPO work. The policy framework handout is in your packet. The screen is just a placeholder for an overview of some of the contents. But this is a good read if you're interested in understanding the importance of the transportation plan, the shared responsibilities of the jurisdictions, including TDOT across our region to build a transportation system that works for everybody. And then the bottom of the first page here on this handout gets into the associated issues and concerns that we're trying to address with our transportation plan. Historically, NPO transportation plans have largely been about getting people from A to B as quickly as possible. Since 1991 and the passage of ICE-T, the Intermodal Surface Transportation Equity Act of 1991, which was Bush-era legislation, really the national policy focused on making sure that we're trying to have co-benefits come out of our transportation spending. So support the economy, support conservation, support community development at the local level. And so you see there the list of associated issues and concerns that we want to make sure that we're accountable to addressing through the transportation plan, which is one plan that we prepare regionally that ought to be connected to the other. So we do an economic development strategy for the region. We do a solid waste master plan for the region. You've helped us work on various aspects of environmental quality across Middle Tennessee. And so it's really important that this is a working companion to those other regional plans as well. You can read the list for yourself, but these are the ones that have sort of risen to the top as priority issues that we want to make sure are addressed. I have on the slide highlighted principles, goals, objectives, because those are the 3 components of the policy framework that will shape our decision-making the most. So the 394 projects, and that number will grow over the next few weeks as we tease out some additional needs from local communities, and then throw on top of that the things that we need to be doing as a region that have not been applied for by any one jurisdiction. Given the limited availability of funding, it's important that we get to a prioritized list. So we'll end up evaluating, scoring, and then ultimately rank ordering projects to compete for a variety of revenue streams. And the way we evaluate and score projects is according to the goals and the objectives that are established through the policy framework. This is a high level information. There's a lot of detail that goes into the scoring process itself in terms of the data metrics that are involved in pulling off the math associated with it. But this policy framework, if you remember, I mentioned the current plan was adopted in 2021. As far as the guiding principles and the overarching goals, this policy framework that will be presented tomorrow is essentially intended to affirm what was adopted back in the 2021 plan with respect to goals. There have been some tweaks to objectives, particularly under goal 6, where we're trying to tease out more priority for projects that are becoming shovel ready. So trying to encourage or incentivize local governments or state agencies to do the front end investment in planning and engineering design work so that we can have something ready to go to Washington in times where discretionary funding is available. It's been one of the weaknesses, if you're the optimist, maybe I'm up here pessimist today. One of our challenges as a region, maybe even as a state when it comes to transportation, is we're pay as you go. We have very limited resources. And a lot of times we get that sort of feeling, well, we're not going to have the money to do that. So let's not even think through what it might look like or what the benefits might be. And it's important that we invest in that to position ourselves for competitive money that is available. And tax money at the local level is also competitive. We're competing with general fund dollars. We're competing with the hearts and minds of taxpayers who need to be convinced to raise their taxes to pay for transportation. So goal 6, the objectives there are really that have been tweaked to try to encourage more front end investment on ideation and design so that we give ourselves a better chance of drawing down the big time money that we need to do transformational projects. I think what else was I going to say about that? I think the one other thing that now I'll flip back to optimism. So the $10.5 billion plan that we adopted in 2021, that was our fiscally constrained plan, meaning that's the most amount of revenue that we thought we were going to be able to get from existing sources of revenue at the time. That's about $250 million a year from federal, state, and local sources. The good news is that with the passage of Choose How You Move Transportation Improvement Program by the voters of Davidson County, that's going to bring in $150 million a year by itself in the base year. And that'll only grow over time. So that's a 60% increase in revenue in the fiscally constrained portion of the plan that we have to identify transit, walking, and biking projects. And the more we identify those projects in the plan, the better chance we have to go to DC and get those upgraded as we go to implementation. So Choose How You Move is establishing like the minimum guarantee to the voters, but the MPO through GNRC will be doing everything it can to work with the city to get those things upgraded and move forward. Any questions about the policy framework? No action here, but welcome any feedback you have on the principles, goals, objectives. You'll see on the slide, but not included in the handout, there's probably 100 performance measures that we use to grade ourselves towards achieving those goals and objectives that just aren't shown yet. And then ultimately we'll have groups of strategies and tactics that we try to deploy through the transportation plan that would be baked into the policy framework. So looking ahead, some of this is review for you. There are several opportunities for you to engage with us. A few of them are on the screen. Two of those, many of you have already done. This group is really important feedback for us to validate our growth forecasts out to the year 2050, but also more than anything else to validate the data layers that we're using to assess environmental impacts of those projects. Many of you have provided, well, some of you, a couple of you, one of you.
Wow.
Yeah,
With the soul.
we really do appreciate most of the heavy lifting on the data layers was actually done the last cycle by this group. So this time around, it was sort of like, hey, there's a new data source here that you should bring into the mix. So that part of your role is complete, and I really do thank you for that. I was just trying to use humor because I'm talking about transportation planning. It's pretty dry. What we're going to do next is evaluate each individual project, its location, the context around that project, to try to identify any potential conflict with the environment. We're also looking for where the environment may make the project more expensive or challenging to implement. So we do cost estimation as well from the environmental layers that we have. And then we'll give that back to you and then engage with you on mitigation strategies or alternatives to that project scope that might be less impactful to the environment. And then ultimately, before we're all said and done with the transportation plan, we'll do a system level analysis of what the collection of investments will mean in terms of environmental quality. The data layers and the growth forecasts are also available online still, gnrc.org/ that is the wrong URL. So it's GNRC, and that's my bad. gnrc.org/maps/2050 growth. So just add /maps in between.
/.
/maps/2050.
Flash.
A lot of flashes. All right, Skylar, I think that's all I've got.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Matthew. So interest of time, I think what we have left is around the table. So anyone here can share anything about your organization, projects you have going on, events coming up that you want to share. And I think we can just share any ongoing things we have sort of at the end. So if anyone has yes.
Big shout out to GNRC and Max Baker's team for all their support, but our team in General Services did our greenhouse gas emissions inventory updated for 2022 data. And we are down compared to 2014, Metro Nashville, so the entire county is down 10% in greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. But so your team's support, and we're trending in the right direction. You know, our goal in Metro is 80% greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2050. So Not quite there yet, but moving in the right direction. But we also updated our 2014, 2017, and 2019 inventories along with doing our 2022. So in addition to all the awesome dashboards that GNRC has, we have our interactive dashboard for our greenhouse gas emissions inventories for all those years. Socket.nashville.gov. Find it there. Let me know if you have trouble, but it's really interesting to explore. Of course, our biggest sector. What's the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Davidson County? Transportation. Thank you, Megan, for working on that for us. So yeah, check it out. Thank you.
Right, well, if no one has anything, I guess we can move into our updates.
Yeah, I can run through a quick, I'm a realist, so we'll just play on this whole perspective of 3 minutes.
No idea.
I'll just keep the train going. So I'm a realist. So we've got the update on the RTP climate action plan. Many of you have been around the table and heard us talk in acronyms of CPRG and EPA. But EPA awarded the Nashville MSA a $1 million climate pollution reduction grant, which was really looking at air quality. And we decided as the GNRC to pick up or to carry through our development district footprint. So we're doing a 17 county study. So the MSA is in the stark gray, and then the GNRC, the 4 that were outside of the MSA, we've carried through. This is in partnership with TDEC, who is doing the TBERS, the statewide Tennessee volunteer emissions reduction study. I'm hopeful that they will, I think they are working on their draft currently and are anticipating maybe a fall timeframe of it will be ready for other eyes. The deliverable date for us for a full climate, comprehensive climate action plan, CCAP, is by December 1st of this year. So that is the due date for all MSAs and for state awardees to have that comprehensive climate action plan done. So that's what we will be hitting, and I will turn it over to Maddie to talk about watersheds.
I am going to keep this very brief because I will be around afterwards. So if you all have any questions, feel free to come and chat more about this. But one thing that we as environmental planners do at GNRC is watershed-based planning. So we help local areas create watershed-based plans for their HUC 12 watersheds. We just recently wrapped up a few in Rutherford County and in Davidson County. And this year we're going to be in Williamson County. So we're going to be working on 2, the Upper West Harpeth River watershed and then the Murphy Creek watershed over in Williamson, sort of near Franklin, a little bit of Franklin and Thompson Station, and then unincorporated Williamson County. Yeah, if you have questions about that, or if you're interested in joining in on any of our steering committee meetings, feel free to come up to me. I know a couple of folks from Harpeth will be there, so I'll see you Friday. But yeah.
Fields and disaster recovery.
I'll talk about these 2 briefly. So we were awarded $20,000 for 11 of our 13 counties to prepare brownfield inventories. We've essentially been spending the last several weeks doing a desk review of all the publicly available data sets to give us clues as to where to do windshield surveys across the counties. And then the third leg of our data collection effort to prepare those inventories will be to engage the public with just local knowledge of where there might have been historic use that had the potential to be a brownfield. So once we get all this data compiled and delivered to TDEC, we're also going to be building a regional GIS-based portal for folks that are interested in conserving, sort of cleaning up and forever conserving some of these properties or redeveloping them into higher and better uses. So central clearinghouse for people to find these sites across Middle Tennessee is the ultimate deliverable. And then for disaster recovery, we were awarded some competitive money from EDA as a result of disaster declarations after the Humphreys-Waverly flooding. And we are working with local communities to update land use policies, zoning ordinances, building codes to make sure that we're not growing in harm's way. And then we're also going to be working with them to assess their infrastructure so that as that does need to be replaced, it can be designed to withstand hazard in the future. And so we have our planning teams and the ECD team both ready to engage local communities across the region on the disaster recovery work funded by EDA. The other thing we're doing as part of this, and this has been done across the nation, so we're looking at best practices and trying to provide some value add to this, but a self-assessment toolkit for communities to be able to get ahead of the game a little bit in terms of assessing themselves for resiliency. There is another NOFO coming out, Jessica, Amy, that Lucas at EDA wants to talk to us about that might provide some funding for actual construction projects in Montgomery and Davidson County. So there could be more to talk about in terms of disaster recovery from EDA funds in the near future.
Thank you. And as long as nobody has any other points of discussion to raise, then we will adjourn. And thank you all very much for coming and for letting us go 2 minutes over time. So have a great rest of your day and get home safe in the rain.